The photograph trembled in my hands. White dress, bright smile, a moment frozen in time from 12 years ago. But it wasn't the photo that made my heart stop. It was the woman standing in my hallway, wearing that same face, those same eyes, staring at me like she'd seen a ghost. Because according to everyone who loved her, Sarah Mitchell died on her wedding day. I should know. I married her sister 6 months after the funeral. But now she was here in my house, and the truth that was about to unravel would destroy everything I thought I knew about the woman I loved, the family I married into, and the darkest secret a mother could ever keep. My name is David Carter, and until that October evening, I believed my life was ordinary. I'm a high school teacher in a small town in Pennsylvania. I married my wife, Emma, 3 years ago. She's a nurse at the county hospital. We have a modest 2-story house on Maple Street, the kind with a front porch swing and neighbors who wave every morning. Emma's mother, Margaret, lives just 20 minutes away and visits every Sunday for dinner. With a picture of normalcy. Or we were. Because nothing about what I'm going to tell you is normal. Nothing about what happened makes sense. And when you hear this story, you're going to ask yourself the same questions I've been asking for months. How does someone vanish on the happiest day of their life? Where do you hide for 12 years when everyone you know believes you're dead? And most importantly, what kind of truth is so terrible that a mother would rather bury her daughter alive than let it see the light of day? Before we go deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And if you're new here, click on the subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. To understand what happened that night, you need to know about Sarah. Emma talks about her older sister the way people talk about saints. Sarah was 26 when she disappeared. She worked as an elementary school teacher, spent her weekends volunteering at the animal shelter, and according to Emma, she lit up every room she entered. The kind of person who remembered your birthday, who asked about your mother's surgery, who made you feel like you mattered. She met Thomas Reynolds at a charity fundraiser in the spring of 2013. He was a financial consultant from Philadelphia, handsome in that clean-cut corporate way, with a confident smile and the kind of charm that made parents approve and friends feel at ease. They dated for 18 months before he proposed on a beach in Cape May, New Jersey. The wedding was set for September 14th, 2013, at St. Catherine's Church, the same place Emma's parents had married 35 years earlier. Emma was supposed to be the maid of honor. She was 23 then, fresh out of nursing school, and she idolized her older sister. She spent weeks helping Sarah plan every detail. The flowers were going to be white roses and lavender. The reception was at the Riverside Inn. Sarah had chosen a simple but elegant dress, the kind that didn't scream for attention but somehow demanded it. Everything was perfect. Everything was ready. And then, on September 14th, 2013, at approximately 11:30 in the morning, 90 minutes before she was supposed to walk down the aisle, Sarah Mitchell vanished. She wasn't at the church. She wasn't at home. Her car was still in the driveway. Her purse was on her bedroom dresser. Her phone was turned off. It was like she'd simply dissolved into air. The search began immediately. Thomas was frantic. He called everyone Sarah knew. Emma and her mother, Margaret, went to Sarah's apartment, hoping she'd just gotten cold feet and needed space. But everything was still there. The wedding dress hanging on the closet door. Makeup laid out on the bathroom counter. Her suitcase packed for the honeymoon to Italy. Nothing suggested she'd planned to leave. The police were called by 2 in the afternoon. At first, they treated it as a missing person case. Standard questions. Standard procedures. Did she have any enemies? Was she having doubts about the marriage? Had anyone threatened her? Everyone said no. Sarah loved Thomas. She was excited about the wedding. She had no reason to run. By evening, the search had expanded. Volunteers from the community combed through parks, woods, and vacant buildings. Dogs were brought in. Her photo was on the local news. Missing woman on her wedding day. The calls came in. Someone thought they saw her at a gas station 30 miles away. Another claimed she was spotted boarding a train to New York. None of it led anywhere. Days turned into weeks. The police investigation intensified. They looked into Thomas's background. Clean. No history of violence. No financial troubles. No secret affairs. They interviewed Sarah's friends, coworkers, and family. Everyone said the same thing. She was happy. She was in love. She wouldn't just leave. Then, 6 weeks after Sarah disappeared, a hiker found something in the woods near Harrisburg, about an hour from where Sarah lived. A torn piece of fabric that matched Sarah's wedding dress. Caught on a branch deep in the forest, stained with what looked like blood. The police investigated. Cadaver dogs searched the area. Nothing else was found. But that piece of fabric changed everything. The theory shifted. Maybe Sarah hadn't run away. Maybe something terrible had happened to her. Maybe she was dead. Margaret, Emma's mother, collapsed when the police told her. Emma held her mother while they both sobbed. Thomas stopped eating, stopped sleeping. He looked like he'd aged 10 years in 2 months. The investigation continued for another year, but leads dried up. No body was found. No credible sightings. No evidence of foul play beyond that torn piece of dress. Eventually, in 2015, 2 years after Sarah disappeared, a judge declared her legally dead. There was a memorial service. Margaret wore black. Emma read a poem. Thomas didn't attend. He'd moved to California by then, unable to stay in a place that reminded him of what he'd lost. Life went on, the way it always does. Emma threw herself into her work at the hospital. Margaret became quieter, more withdrawn. I met Emma in 2016 at a community health fair. She was giving flu shots. I was there representing the school. We started talking. She made me laugh. I made her smile. We went on a date. Then another. 6 months later, I proposed. Emma said yes, but she also said she needed to tell me something first. We sat on a bench in Riverside Park, the place where she and Sarah used to feed ducks as children, and she told me about her sister. About the wedding that never happened. About the search that never ended. About the grief that never quite healed. She cried, and I held her, and I promised I would never let anything hurt her like that again. It was a promise I had no idea I couldn't keep. Emma and I married in the spring of 2017. Small ceremony, just family and close friends. Margaret gave Emma away. It was bittersweet. You could see the shadow of Sarah in everything. The flowers Emma chose. The church she wanted. The way Margaret cried during the vows. We moved into the house on Maple Street that summer. It needed work. The roof leaked, the pipes rattled, and the backyard was overgrown. But it was ours. Emma loved it. She planted a garden in Sarah's memory. White roses and lavender. Every Sunday, Margaret came for dinner. We'd sit at the kitchen table, and she'd tell stories about when the girls were young. How Sarah taught Emma to ride a bike. How they used to put on plays in the living room. How Sarah always wanted to be a teacher because she believed every child deserved to feel special. These dinners were sacred. Margaret needed them. Emma needed them. I understood. Grief doesn't follow a timeline. It doesn't fade just because years pass. You learn to live with it, but it never truly leaves. Then, 3 years into our marriage, something changed. It was small at first. Margaret started missing Sunday dinners. She'd call with excuses. She wasn't feeling well. She had an appointment. She needed to rest. Emma worried, but didn't push. She thought maybe her mother was finally starting to let go of the past, to find peace. I thought so too. We were wrong. In June of this year, Margaret called Emma at work. She sounded strange. Her voice was shaky, almost frightened. She told Emma she needed to talk to her about something important, something she should have said years ago. Emma asked what it was, but Margaret said it had to be in person. They agreed to meet that Sunday. But Margaret didn't show up. Emma called her. No answer. She drove to her mother's house. The door was locked. Margaret's car was in the driveway. Emma used her spare key to get inside. The house was empty. Emma searched every room. Nothing seemed out of place. But then she found something in Margaret's bedroom. A locked drawer in the old oak dresser. Emma had never noticed it before. She didn't have the key, but she was worried enough to force it open. Inside, she found letters. Dozens of them. Handwritten. All addressed to Margaret. And they were all from Sarah. Emma called me immediately. I rushed home from work. She was sitting on our couch, pale and shaking, holding a stack of envelopes. She couldn't speak at first. She just handed me one of the letters. The postmark was from 2015, 2 years after Sarah disappeared. The return address was a P.O. box in Vermont. I opened it and started reading. What would you do if you discovered someone you loved, someone you mourned, someone you buried in your heart, had been alive all along? How do you process that kind of betrayal? That kind of pain? Take a moment and think about it. Because what Emma felt in that moment is something no one should ever have to feel. The letter was dated March 2015. Dear Mom, I know you're angry with me. I know you don't understand. But I need you to know that I'm safe. I am okay. I couldn't marry him, Mom. I couldn't go through with it. There were things about Thomas you didn't know. Things I didn't tell anyone because I was ashamed. He wasn't who everyone thought he was. Behind closed doors, he was controlling. Jealous. He isolated me from my friends. He monitored my phone. He made me feel like I was going crazy. The week before the wedding, I found messages on his computer. He was talking to other women, making plans to see them. I confronted him, and he told me I was imagining things, that I was paranoid, that if I loved him, I would trust him. But I knew what I saw. I knew the truth. I couldn't marry him, but I also couldn't face the shame of calling off the wedding. Everyone was so excited. You and Dad spent so much money. Emma was so happy for me. How could I tell everyone that the man they all loved was a lie? So I ran. I know it was cowardly. I know it broke your heart. But I felt trapped. I felt like I had no other choice. I'm living under a different name now. I have a small life, but it's mine. It's safe. Please don't look for me. Please don't tell Emma or Dad. Let them believe I'm gone. It's better this way. I love you. Sarah. Emma read letter after letter. They spanned years. Sarah writing to her mother, begging her to keep the secret. Margaret responding, though we didn't find those letters. It was clear from Sarah's words that Margaret had been in contact with her all this time. While Emma grieved, while Thomas was investigated, while we all moved on believing Sarah was dead, Margaret knew the truth. Emma couldn't breathe. She kept saying, she let me think my sister was dead. She let me bury her. She let me cry at her memorial. How could she do that? I didn't have an answer. There was no answer that made it right. Emma tried calling her mother again. Still no answer. We drove to Margaret's house. Still empty. Emma was beside herself. Where was her mother? Where was Sarah? That night, Emma couldn't sleep. She lay awake staring at the ceiling, and I held her hand, feeling utterly helpless. Then, at 2 a.m, we heard a sound downstairs. A door opening. Footsteps. Emma grabbed my arm. David, someone's in the house. I got up, heart pounding, and grabbed the baseball bat we kept in the closet. I crept down the stairs, Emma behind me. The light in the hallway was on. I hadn't left it on. I moved toward the kitchen, bat raised, ready to defend us. And that's when I saw her, standing in my kitchen, wearing jeans and a blue sweater, hair shorter than in the pictures, but the face unmistakable. Sarah. She looked at me, and her eyes went wide. Who are you? I couldn't speak. I just stared. Emma came down the stairs behind me and froze. For a moment, nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Then Emma whispered, Sarah? What happened next is something I'll never forget. Sarah started crying. Not soft tears, but deep body-shaking sobs. Emma ran to her, and they held each other in the middle of my kitchen, two sisters who hadn't seen each other in 12 years, clinging to each other like they were drowning. I stood there, still holding the bat, trying to process what I was seeing. Finally, Sarah pulled back and looked at Emma. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Emma's face was a mix of joy and fury and confusion. You've been alive? All this time? And Mom knew. Sarah nodded. She's been helping me, sending me money, keeping my secret. I made her a promise not to tell anyone. I thought it was the only way. The only way for what? Emma demanded. The only way to protect myself. And to protect all of you. Over the next hour, Sarah told us everything. She told us about Thomas. About how he'd started changing after they got engaged. How he became possessive, checking her emails, questioning where she went and who she saw. How he grabbed her arm hard enough to bruise when she tried to leave dinner with friends. How he told her that once they were married, things would be different. She'd understand her place. She told us about the messages she found. Not just flirting, but graphic conversations with multiple women. Plans to meet them, even after the wedding. When she confronted him, he didn't deny it. He said it didn't mean anything. That he loved her, but he needed variety. That if she was a good wife, she'd understand. Sarah said she felt like the walls were closing in. She couldn't tell her parents because they adored Thomas. She couldn't tell Emma because Emma was so young and excited about being in the wedding. She felt completely alone. So, on the morning of the wedding, she packed a small bag, left everything else behind, and took a bus to Vermont. She stayed in shelters at first, then found work under a false name, paying cash for everything. She wrote to her mother 6 months later, and Margaret, torn between relief and heartbreak, agreed to keep her secret. Margaret sent money when Sarah needed it and visited her twice a year. But she never told Emma. She never told anyone. Why did you come back now? I asked. Sarah looked at me with exhausted eyes. Because Mom's sick. Really sick. Cancer. She is maybe 6 months. And she told me she couldn't die with this secret. She said Emma deserved to know the truth. So I came back to tell you myself. Emma was silent for a long time. Then she said, you let me think you were dead for 12 years because you were afraid of what people would think. I was afraid of him, Sarah said quietly. He told me once that if I ever tried to leave him, he'd make sure I regretted it. After I disappeared, I kept waiting for him to find me. I checked the news every day. I was terrified. When they declared me dead, I finally felt like I could breathe. Like I was free. But what about us? Emma's voice broke. What about me? Sarah reached for her sister's hand. I thought about you every single day. But I also thought you were better off without me. That you could move on and be happy if you believed I was gone. I was wrong. I see that now. I stole 12 years from you. From all of us. And I can never get that back. They talked until the sun came up. It wasn't neat. It wasn't easy. There was anger and tears and moments when Emma couldn't even look at her sister. But there was also love. Because underneath all the pain, they were still sisters. We visited Margaret the next day. She was frail, her body betraying her. But her eyes lit up when she saw Emma and Sarah together. She apologized through tears, explaining that she'd been torn between protecting one daughter and being honest with the other. That she knew it was wrong, but she didn't know how to make it right. Emma forgave her. Not immediately, but eventually. Because what else can you do when someone you love is dying? Sarah stayed. She moved in with Margaret to help take care of her. Emma visited every day after work. I watched my wife slowly rebuild a relationship with a sister she'd thought she'd lost. It wasn't the same. It could never be the same. Trust, once broken, doesn't just snap back into place. But they were trying. And in the end, maybe that's all any of us can do. Try. Margaret passed away 3 months later. At her funeral, Sarah and Emma stood side by side. Two sisters who'd been torn apart by fear, by secrets, by choices that seemed impossible at the time. I think about this story often. About how trauma can make us believe that running is safer than staying. That hiding is easier than being honest. About how the lies we tell to protect ourselves can end up hurting the people we love most. Sarah was terrified, and in her terror, she made a choice that cost her 12 years of her life and nearly destroyed her family. Was she wrong? Was Margaret wrong for keeping her secret? I don't know if there's a clear answer. But I do know this. Secrets are heavy. They weigh on us in ways we don't even realize until we finally set them down. And sometimes, the thing we're most afraid of facing is the very thing that could set us free. So I want to ask you, if you were Sarah, what would you have done? If you were Emma, could you forgive? If you were Margaret, would you have kept the secret, or would you have told the truth? Think about it. And if this story moved you, if it made you think about your own life, about the secrets you carry or the truths you've been afraid to face, then maybe it's time to have that conversation you've been avoiding. Because life is too short to spend it hiding. And the people who love you deserve the truth, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. Thank you for watching. If this story touched your heart, please like and share it with someone who needs to hear it. And subscribe for more stories that will make you think, make you feel, and maybe even change the way you see the world. Until next time, remember that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is simply tell the truth.